Some people feel safer around animals than they ever feel around human beings. Not because they hate people, and not because something is wrong with them. And most people never admit this out loud. But there is a reason this happens, and it's not what you think. And once you see the reason, you may never look at your relationships the same way again. Over time, their nervous system learns something simple with humans. You often have to stay alert. With animals, you don't. If you've ever felt this, you'll recognize it instantly. You walk into a room full of people, and something in you quietly tightens. You smile, you act normal, you do everything right. But inside, a part of you is already bracing. And then you come home. Before you even put your keys down, your animal is there. No judgment, no emotional reading, no shifting mood you have to decode. And something in your chest finally lets go, like your body has been holding a breath it didn't even realize it was holding. That moment is not small, because this isn't just about loving animals. It's about where your nervous system learned safety. And once you understand that, you start to understand yourself in a way you never have before. So why does this happen? Why do some people, not all people, but some find genuine emotional rest around animals in a way they rarely, if ever, find around other humans? The easy answer is personality, introversion, shyness, a gentle nature. But the real answer is older than personality, and it lives in the body before it lives in the mind. Here is what humans do, what they cannot help doing, because they are human that animals never do. Humans change, not gradually, sometimes between morning and afternoon. Someone who was warm towards you yesterday carries something cooler today, and you were given no explanation, no warning, no map for navigating the shift. This is not overthinking, this is conditioning. And so you learned, without anyone teaching you, to always be slightly prepared, always scanning, always holding some small part of yourself in reserve, in case the version of the person that arrived today was not the version you were hoping for. You feel the gap between what people show and what they mean. The smile that arrives a half-second too late, the interest that sits slightly above the eyes rather than behind them, the warmth that has a quality to it performed, just slightly that you register somewhere beneath language. You've always felt these things. You may have spent years wondering if you were too sensitive, if you were imagining it. You weren't imagining it. Your body is not reacting randomly. It is remembering. And your animal, the creature waiting at the door, or asleep on the end of the bed, or watching you quietly from across the room, has never once produced that feeling. Not a single time. Because what you see in them is simply what is there. No gap, no subtext, no warmth with something cooler sitting underneath it. Your nervous system knows the difference. It has always known the difference. But where did that knowing come from? It didn't arrive in adulthood. By adulthood, it was already finished, already built, already automatic, already running beneath every room you entered and every relationship you tried to trust. It came from much earlier than that. There was a version of you younger, more open, still forming, who felt things deeply and showed it, who cried when something was sad, who needed comfort when something was frightening, who reached toward the people around them with the ordinary, uncomplicated trust that children begin with. And somewhere along the way, that openness became a problem. Maybe it was the parent whose warmth cooled when you were too emotional. Maybe it was the household where a particular kind of quiet meant danger was coming, and you learned to read that quiet the way other children learn to read weather. Maybe it was more subtle than either of those, simply a pattern of having your feelings received with slight impatience, redirected, made more convenient for the person who was supposed to hold them. You were not too much. You were simply in the wrong room. And so you learned to manage it, to compress it, to bring only the parts of yourself that were easy to receive and keep the rest somewhere interior, somewhere no one could see it, and find it inconvenient. You learn to walk into rooms already adjusted, already edited, already performing a version of yourself calibrated to what the room could tolerate. That is what walking on eggshells actually does to a person, not just in the moments of tension, but in the body. In the automatic below-conscious adjustments you make before you've even decided to make them. And then perhaps there was an animal. Perhaps it was your own. Perhaps it was a neighbor's dog that would sit beside you without needing anything. A cat that appeared and stayed. A creature that encountered you, the unedited, unperformed, unmanaged version of you, and simply remained. No adjustment needed, no compression required. You could be sad and it would stay. You could be silent and it would stay. You could be the version of yourself that you kept interior around everyone else, and the animal would simply sit beside that version of you as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Because to them, it was. Your nervous system recorded that, long before you had language for what it was recording. Safety felt like this: warmth without condition, presence without performance. And it filed that away. You may not notice it happening. It moves too fast for conscious thought. But when you walk into a social situation, a gathering, a meeting, a family event, your body begins working. Your chest tightens, just slightly. Your breathing becomes more deliberate. Your eyes make a small, fast sweep of the room. This is not anxiety as a flaw. This is a nervous system doing precisely what it was trained to do. You grew up in an environment where reading people accurately mattered, where a misread had consequences. And so your body became extraordinarily skilled at vigilance, learning to stay slightly ahead of what was coming, to prepare. And that preparation never fully stops. Even in rooms that are objectively safe, even with people who have never hurt you, the mechanism runs automatically. It doesn't wait for permission. It simply fires. For many people, this was the first place they ever felt emotionally safe without effort. Not in a relationship, not in a family home, not in a friendship. In the quiet, uncomplicated company of an animal who simply stayed. Now come home. The moment your animal is near before you've spoken, before anything has happened, something in the system stops firing. The scan doesn't begin, the chest stays open, the jaw releases, the shoulders come down. In psychology, this is called parasympathetic activation. The state the body enters when threat assessment is no longer required. Heart rate slows, breath deepens. Muscles that have been holding something for hours, sometimes for decades, finally release. Animals produce this state not because they are doing something therapeutic, but because they are simply being what they are, and your body knows the difference between that and everything else. Your body keeps a map of where it learned danger and where it learned rest. The animal is on the rest side of that map. For many people, it is one of the very few things that is. If you've made it this far, something about this is true for you. And at some point, someone made you feel that this was something to apologize for. These are not neutral observations. They carry a verdict inside them. And perhaps you absorbed some of that. Perhaps you began to describe it as a quirk before someone else could describe it as a problem. Perhaps you made the joke first. Perhaps you've sat in the parking lot of a social event, already exhausted before going in, and felt guilty about the exhaustion, as though the tiredness itself was evidence of something wrong with you. It wasn't. There are people who move through social situations without that particular tiredness, who find rooms full of people energizing rather than depleting, who don't feel the subtle drain of performance, of scanning, of holding themselves slightly in reserve. And the world tends to treat those people as the standard, and everyone else as a variation that needs explaining. But the tiredness you feel in social spaces is not a malfunction. It is information. Your nervous system is not broken. It is accurately reporting on an environment it has learned, through real experience, to treat with caution. And the relief you feel around your animal is not avoidance. It is not failure at connection. It is your body finding the one space where the vigilance can stop, where the performance is unnecessary, where you can be for a little while, simply the version of yourself that doesn't need to be managed for anyone's comfort. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the thing most people spend their entire lives searching for in human relationships. You found it. It simply arrived in a form the world didn't expect. You have sat across from someone who said everything correctly. The right words, at the right moments, in the right tone. Who asked how you were and waited for the answer. Who offered understanding in the right quantities. And something in you, something below the conversation, below conscious thought, registered a gap. You may have told yourself you were being uncharitable, paranoid, too sensitive, there it is again. But you were not. You were detecting something real. You can feel the difference between performed warmth and real presence. This is what people who feel safest around animals develop over a lifetime of navigating human emotional complexity, an almost involuntary sensitivity to the distance between what people show and what they actually feel. The warmth that is available when it costs nothing and quietly withdraws the moment something real is required. You know what conditional warmth feels like. You learned it early, from people whose love arrived when you were convenient and cooled when you were not. And that education, painful as it was, gave you something, an internal instrument, a precision most people don't have and don't know to look for. Your animal has no such gap. What they feel is what they show. When they come to you, it is because they are coming to you not because it serves another purpose, not because of what you can give them, not because of something that will be recalled later. The emotional coherence is complete. What you see is entirely what is there. For someone who has spent decades navigating the distance between human performance and human feeling, that coherence is not a small comfort. It is everything. Pause with that. You didn't develop this sensitivity because something went wrong with you. You developed it because you needed it, because the people around you early, when it mattered most, required you to. The skill came at a cost, but it is a skill, and it is yours. Understanding this doesn't fix it overnight. It doesn't dissolve decades of learned vigilance or instantly make crowded rooms feel safe. That is not how nervous systems work. But here is what does change. Not the sensitivity. The sensitivity stays. It is part of how you move through the world, and it is not a disorder to be corrected. What changes is the story you've been told about it, the verdict. The idea that a person who needs careful conditions to feel safe in human relationships has somehow failed at being human. You haven't failed. You adapted, with intelligence, with precision, with the resources you had, in the conditions you were given, at an age when you had no choice about either. The vigilance was never a flaw. It was the appropriate response to an environment that required it. The animal preference was never an avoidance of life. It was your nervous system finding in the one available place the conditions it needed in order to rest. Safe human relationships do exist. They are rarer than the world suggests. They require time and consistency, and the slow accumulation of evidence that the warmth is real and the safety is not conditional. Your nervous system already knows what it's looking for. It learned the feeling in those quiet moments, in the simple, uncomplicated company of a creature that never asked you to be different. That felt sense of genuine safety is not lost. It is alive in you, carried in the body, not just remembered in the mind. You already know what rest feels like. You've felt it. And that knowing, quiet as it is where everything begins. Sometimes the places we feel safest reveal the stories our bodies never stopped carrying. The animal beside you is not just company. It is evidence of what you needed, of what your nervous system recognized as true long before your mind had words for it. They stayed when you were exhausted, in the way that doesn't show on your face. They offered presence without performance, warmth, without the quiet arithmetic of what it might cost you later. The animal didn't teach you what love is. The animal reminded you of what love was always supposed to feel like before the conditions arrived. And sometimes healing begins not by forcing yourself to become different, but by finally understanding why you adapted the way you did. You are not broken. You are someone who learned where safety lived. And you were right. This channel exists for people who carry quietly and who have spent too long without language for who they are. If that's you, subscribe. Not because I'm asking, but because somewhere inside, you already know you belong here.